Welcome to the WP Builds podcast, bringing you the latest news from the WordPress community. Now, welcome your hosts, David Wormsley and Nathan Wrigley.
Hello there and welcome once again to the WP Builds podcast. You have reached episode number 292, entitled Why WPCodeBox Should Be in Your WordPress Plugin Lineup. It was published on Thursday the 18th of August 2022. My name's Nathan Wrigley, and just before we get to the podcast, a few bits of housekeeping. Head over to our website, WPBuilds.com. You can find all of the episodes there, and there's a page to subscribe. Believe it or not, it's WPBuilds.com/subscribe. You'll be able to find our YouTube channel and Twitter feed. We are getting more and more into Twitter and learning the nuances of how it works, finally. There's also links to other pages, for example, our deals page, WPBuilds.com/deals, and that page is a bit like Black Friday, but every single day of the week, significant amounts off, coupon codes for significant price reductions on WordPress products. Speaking of Twitter, as I just did, if you fancy trying something out, we've got a Mastodon install, which is a Twitter clone. It's a free open source piece of software called Mastodon, and we've installed it at wpbuilds.social. If you fancy joining us there, it's fairly low in numbers at the moment, but you never know, you may be able to find an alternative to Twitter there. It's wpbuilds.social, and yes, that is a URL, wpbuilds.social. The WP Builds podcast is brought to you today by GoDaddy Pro. GoDaddy Pro, the home of managed WordPress hosting that includes free domain, SSL, and 24/7 support. Bundle that with the Hub by GoDaddy Pro to unlock more free benefits to manage multiple sites in one place. Invoice clients and get 30% off new purchases. You can find out more by going to go.me/WP Builds. That's go.me/WP Builds. And we do thank GoDaddy Pro for their support and for helping keep the WP Builds podcast going. Okay, what have we got for you today? Oh my goodness me, what have we got for you today? This episode is going to possibly change your WordPress life. If you've not heard of WPCodeBox, well, we've got Ovi on the podcast today, and he's talking about it, why he built it, what it does, and it does a lot. You can boil it down to this. It's a plugin which allows you to keep snippets on your WordPress website. Now, it may be that you really aren't into coding, but perhaps there's something in here for everybody. If you're into coding already, then you'll know the importance of snippets. It can reduce the amount of plugins that you use. It can reduce the bloat on a website. But this plugin does a whole lot more. It allows you to use other people's snippets from a library. It allows you to conditionally apply them. So you could have, for example, a piece of CSS which only appears on the homepage and doesn't get loaded and bloat out the rest of the site. And it's basically incredibly powerful. It's one of those plugins where your imagination is the limit. I've started using it and I'm completely in love with it. And Ovi will hopefully explain what it is, how it works, and you never know, you might be able to make use of it in your WordPress workflow. I hope that you enjoy it. I am joined on the podcast today by Ovi from WPCodeBox. Hello.
Hey Nathan, and hello to all the listeners.
Yeah, it's really nice to have you on. Just for reference, Ovi and I have been having a right old chat over the last couple of days, getting into all sorts of interesting subjects. I feel like I've made a new friend, Ovi.
Yeah, me too. It was
It's
fun.
really, really nice. But we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about Ovi's, what I can only describe as fabulous product. I'm going to encourage you, actually, any listener who is paying attention to this podcast, listen to this URL. It's WPCodeBox.com. So let me say that one more time. WPCodeBox.com. Just pause the podcast now. go and look at that website, have a good fiddle around, because what we're going to get into will require a little bit of explanation. And if you give yourself the heads up, go and explore what it can do, and then come back and press play, then you'll probably be in better shape listening to this podcast. So off you go and do that, and we'll see you in a few minutes. Right. Hopefully you did that and you're back. So, Ov, first of all, a little bit of context. Would you just tell us a little bit about yourself? Nothing to do with the plugin, more about who you are, where you live, how you came to be involved in WordPress and so on.
Yeah, so I am Ovi. I am from Timișoara, Romania. I've been programming computers, I think, since I was 7. Started with BASIC. And yeah, since then I've had, I think, all the jobs in this industry. And a couple years back, I started working on some WordPress projects. I fell in love with the project, the community, and yeah, since then, I'm a WordPress developer, I think.
Is this what you do now completely full-time, more or less?
Yes. I'm involved in a few plugins.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the one that we're going to talk about today specifically, and we're really only going to talk about that, is this WPCodeBox plugin. As I said, the URL was available to you. I'll put all the URLs if we stray across any in the show notes. First of all, just try to give us the elevator pitch for us. What is it? What does it do? Why did you build it? What is it trying to satisfy? I know that's a tall order given the breadth and scope of what it can do, but roughly, what does it do?
Basically, it's a WordPress code snippet manager. It's used to add code snippets to WordPress in an organized and safe way. So how did I build it? Initially, I wanted to build an IDE for WordPress in React, but after a lot of thought, I saw that people actually love to use code snippets to make small customizations and not so much write a lot of code. And yeah, that's how I built it. It's like an IDE, but for managing code snippets in a WordPress install.
Yeah.
And yeah, after doing a bit of research, I saw that a lot of people had a very scattered snippet library here and there, good snippets. So that's how I had the idea to build a cloud repository, so you could save your snippets to the cloud and use it on all your sites. So you can build your own library of snippets that you know work and are helpful.
Yeah, perfect. That's excellent. Thank you. So for those of us who are using WordPress, but we're only interacting with the UI, you know, we're using a page builder or something like that. It may be that you've never really had to use any snippets. You've just built yourself a website and you've relied on the functionality that resides inside of your page builder and so on and so forth. And if it was out of the bounds of that, you just ignored it. Or perhaps if you were a bit more curious, you went out and you started Googling, how could I do this particular thing that I want to try? And you very, very well may have come across some sort of Stack Overflow type site where they list out a few little bits of code and you copy and paste that typically inside of your functions.php file, and it hopefully doesn't break things and it makes your site do something slightly differently. And so is that the intended audience? Are you after sort of people who are tinkering with WordPress, or is it from tinkerers right up to serious hardcore developers as well? So who's the intended audience?
I think if you work with WordPress, sooner or later you're going to need to add a code snippet. So yeah, most WordPress users are going to need this, and I tried to make a nicer way to do this. So for example, as you mentioned, functions.php, you need to FTP into that, make changes, something might break, as you said. So yeah, that's why I built it. And the market, I think, yeah, is everyone that's gonna need to customize their WordPress site at one point.
Yeah. So it's all about customization. Right, first of all,
Yes.
Bit of a hat tip to David Wormsley. David Wormsley, as Ovi well knows, is the co-host of this podcast. We'll be doing an episode with him next week. Stay tuned for that. He put me onto this plugin of yours, WPCodeBox. And I'm going to be honest, Covey, the first time I saw it, I thought, well, how would I even use that? I'm quite happy implementing my little snippets here, there, and everywhere. And then David kind of kept pushing it, and I eventually succumbed, and I looked at it, and it was upon looking at it properly, the light really did switch on, and I thought, oh, okay, I totally get it now. Because in the beginning I thought, well, I've happily got a system for storing my little snippets. I use them on my IDE and I store them there, and that's fine. And then I just suddenly thought, but that's liable to break. They're not really organized very well. I can't put them directly into websites. I've got to find them, locate them. Whereas your cloud solution allows you to do all of this inside of WordPress. But most interestingly, I think, is that you've got this cloud component where all of the snippets that you've got, you can organize and save them up to the cloud and pull them down onto the website. So just talk us through how the difference that you've got with local code and cloud-based code, because that's a big part of the plugin, isn't it?
Yeah, so WPCodeBox works locally, mostly like any other snippet manager. You can create code snippets, CSS, PHP, HTML, SCSS, and then you can run them, execute them. But once you found a snippet that, for example, you think you're going to use on multiple sites, you can upload it to the cloud. So once you do that and you install WPCodeBox on a different site, you can just pull that snippet locally and execute it from there on the new site. My vision for WPCodeBox going forward is to not only manage your snippets from the plugin, but also have a web app online where you will be able to manage, organize your snippets that you use.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, and I think the piece that I missed, which we'll get into now, was I just thought that it was a repository for snippets, and I didn't realize that there was a whole load of other stuff which came along for the ride with the plugin, because not only can it store HTML, PHP, CSS, and Sass, and you can download that locally, push it up to the cloud, you can organize it, and so on. The bit that I'm finding most interesting is the ability to implement certain bits of code, certain snippets, with some kind of conditional logic. And in an era where we're constantly worrying about the bloat of our websites, about having them as lean as possible and using scripts as infrequently as possible and only having things load where it needs to load and when it needs to load, that's something which is built directly into the plugin. So do you want to talk us through like the conditional workflow that you've got, the way that you can make sites leaner and faster by only applying things that need to be applied in certain places?
Yeah, so that was a really requested feature, and I implemented it based on user feedback, and it seems users loved it. So using the condition builder, you can set, for example, snippets to only run on certain pages or only if the user has a certain role, for example. Make the snippets execute only between two defined dates. So for example, if you want to add a holiday notice, you can just set it to run on specified dates. Yeah, and it from what I see, it gets a lot of views.
I think
people really like it.
Yeah, I think this is incredibly powerful, and I think we should explore it a little bit more, because there's great power in what you just said. So a good example, I was playing with it the other day, and I just wanted on a particular post type, there was a little bit of awkward CSS that needed to be slightly different just on the singles of this one particular post type. It had no business being anywhere else. It would have been just another 10 lines of CSS bloating my styles.css file. So I went into the plugin, chose CSS as the language of choice, wrote the CSS, and then went through the conditional workflow, which I've got to say is super simple to use. I basically said, it asks, where do you want this to go? And you get a set of options and you pick. In my case, it was, I want it to be on a single of this particular post type, and we're off to the races. And then it's only going to load just there. But the conditions are really deep and broad. So you mentioned there was things like dates, and there's things like user roles, and just listeners, just dwell on that for a minute. Get your head spinning around what possibilities you could have there with different pieces of PHP, different HTML being output, different CSS being output. Like you said, holiday time, you might want snow falling at Christmas. Of course you do. And you can implement these with all the different conditions. So just just to really hammer this home, Ovi, go through what the conditions are, all of them, if you don't mind.
Okay, so the conditions are location. For example, if you want to run a snippet everywhere on the admin or on the front end only, the current post. So for example, if you want to run the snippet only on certain post or page, for example, only on the WooCommerce checkout, the current post type. So for example, if you want to run the snippet on only pages or only posts, the post parent. So if the current post has a certain parent, only execute the snippet then. Taxonomies, so just for certain taxonomies. You can use custom PHP conditions where you can use the PHP conditional tags and write your own conditions and combine them using the PHP logical operators. We have page URL, so we can say that if the page URL contains a certain string, execute the snippet or don't execute the snippet. The current logged in user, the current logged in user role, the time, and to run the snippet on certain days of the week.
It's just so many. It's fabulous.
And what I wanted to mention is that you can also combine these conditions using logical operators. This is all done through the UI. So you can say condition 1 and condition 2. And once you group these conditions, you can combine them using OR between them. So for example, when the page is this and the user is this, do this.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it really, truly incredible. I mean, my head is literally spinning with all the different kind of things that you could put in there. Does it work? Does it work universally and always? Because one of the great marketing slogans that all WordPress plugins is, it's compatible with everything. Is that the case here? Are there any kind of little caveats that you've run across where it I don't know, it hasn't worked as effectively, or does it basically work always, all the time, everywhere?
You mean compatibility with different
That's right,
themes?
Yeah. Have
and
you run into
builders?
any
Yeah,
issues?
No issues.
That's perfect.
No
yeah.
issues. You can target, for example, builder frames or builder editors, or remove code from there. It all works.
Yeah. In terms of where you store them, let's just run through that one again. You've basically got two options. You can save it locally, but then you can throw it up to the cloud, which I'm presuming is run on your own hardware, your infrastructure somehow.
Yes.
Yeah. Where are they all stored? Do you have them in on an Amazon box or a data center somewhere?
Yes. There's a cloud infrastructure that stores the snippets. It's backed up twice daily to offsite locations, and yes.
Yeah.
You want more details about that?
No, that's fine. I was just curious to know, because just the idea that there could be some fairly, I don't know, sensitive code in there, or things that people are keen to keep to themselves or what have you. And I know that security is one of the big things. So we're straying two directions here. First of all, intellectual property, and the idea that maybe some of the code may belong to you, or you feel ownership is important. But also, if you're running PHP and so on, then I guess security is a concern. And I know that on the homepage of your website, you mentioned that as one of the key features. So let's just talk about that. I think we've done the first piece. We know where it's stored and so on. That's fine. Talk about the architecture and the security model that you've got, because that could be important and it might be a cause of concern for some people.
Yes, I agree. So when you build a plugin like this, security is very important, and it's the only thing that keeps me up at night. But what makes me sleep better is I like that I chose to build. So the plugin WPCodeBox is built like a single page application. So you don't switch pages when you do everything. Everything happens on a single page using Ajax calls. So what this allowed me to do is to only have like 2 entry points into the plugin, into the backend PHP. So these two places are the only places that the request can come in, and it's very easy to secure. So even if I make changes in the future, I tied my hands to make sure that I cannot add anything that could compromise the security of the site. and I think it worked very well so far.
Yeah, you're happy with the implementation there. Yeah,
And
because
this allows me to do some interesting stuff. For example, to not run code snippets in any of the WPCodeBox requests, for example. And so even if you add a snippet that could break your site and our safety system doesn't detect it, it would still allow you to disable it or edit it as long as you don't refresh the page because it's already loaded. And it gives us, for example, it would be relatively trivial in the future to have WPCodeBox as a Chrome extension, for example.
Right. Yeah. You mentioned that you were doing some checks in order to identify whether things were going to break. How does that work? What's going on there? Are you trying to figure out if, in some cases, watch out, don't click save here, there's a problem?
Yes. First, the editor will notify you of any PHP errors that are, things like syntax error, you missed a semicolon or stuff like that. So you can fix that right then. But if you save a bad snippet, it will do its best to detect the error, and it will disable only that snippet, and it will show you in the UI a report of the error. So you can fix it, enable it, and you're good to go.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Now, my IDE is full of dozens of folders. I've got labels for everything, and over the years, things have become unmanageable, let's say. I've just got dozens of folders with different types of snippets for all sorts of things, and that leads me to the question about taxonomy in terms of how can we organize things. Are we able to, in the cloud and on the local website, are we able to create folders? Can we create folders within folders and so on? In other words, how can we structure this so it's not just one giant stream of snippets, which is going to be awfully hard to keep a track of?
Yes, you can create folders just like in any IDE to organize your snippets. You can upload or download whole folders to the cloud. Right now, subfolders are not supported, but I do plan to add subfolders and tags. These are on the roadmap.
Okay, well, we'll talk about the roadmap a little bit later, but folders within folders within folders, if you like, and you can organize it in your own way to your heart's content.
Folders within folders is not possible. Right
okay, so just a root folder and then another one next to it and another one next to it.
Exactly.
Okay, got it. Sorry, I misunderstood that. In terms of trying to make it easier for people to actually write their snippets, You've been trying to do that as well. So you've got autocomplete in all sorts of different areas, and obviously if you're very familiar with working with code, it may be that you've just got the muscle memory and you can do this stuff without looking up and it works fine. But for those people who might need a bit more of a helping hand, tell us about your autocomplete that you've got at the moment, and then we'll get into some interesting stuff about what you're thinking you might do in the future.
Yes, so autocomplete was there from the beginning. I was involved like 7 years ago in the development of something like an IDE before, so I know how to work with code. But I've been programming for a lot of time, and autocomplete is still useful for me even now. So it's not just for the beginners. But yes, WPCodeBox will autocomplete PHP functions, WordPress functions. But more interestingly, it would autocomplete WordPress actions and filters. So for example, if you write add action, it will show you autocomplete list with all the WordPress actions, and you can search through them.
So it will autocomplete not just the typical things which you might find in an IDE related to PHP, but it will also help you out on the WordPress side of things as well, which is really helpful.
Yes. And another feature I discussed with my users, but this is not already implemented, but it was very liked. I want to implement a function and action and filter reference inside WPCodeBox. So for example, if you write an action, to be able to see its arguments, details, and maybe even have a link to take you to the codex to see more details.
Oh, I see. So reference material. So if a certain thing has been suggested, click on this link and here's how it ought to be implemented correctly.
Yes.
To show you helpful. Yeah, that's
to show you the parameters, return types, a short description inside the editor.
Yeah. Oh, that's lovely. Yeah. Right. Okay. Let's move on to the next piece of this autocomplete puzzle, because yesterday when we spoke, you mentioned that you've got what I consider to be a really interesting and grand plan for, well, autocomplete on steroids, really. You're hoping at some point, and caveat emptor, this is not done yet. This is just blue sky thinking. You're hoping at some point to take AI and bring it into this so that you can create code without necessarily knowing how to do it correctly. You're just going to, well, you explain, because it's fascinating.
Yes, so it's not just a plan. I actually have an MVP that I played with but it's not something I could share right now, but it will allow to write code, WordPress code snippets specifically based on plain text. So let's say an example I tried is write a PHP code snippet that will take the latest 12 random posts from Reddit and save them as posts. And it perfectly generated the code for that.
How on earth does that even work? I mean, you're obviously not going to be able to go into the detail. It's a podcast. But just give us the broad outline of how that kind of stuff even is possible.
Well, let me see what I can say. Yeah, basically you have an AI model that you train using WordPress code snippets. The nice thing about this is that as people are going to start to use it, it's only going to get better.
So it's one of those models where the more people use it, the more it will begin to understand, okay, that works well.
Yes.
We'll add that, and that worked well, but that didn't. Okay, let's have a... And is that then going to feed back to you? If things don't work out, you'll be able to, I don't know, click a button saying, no, that didn't function correctly, and you'll get a notification and try to tidy things up for the AI.
I haven't gotten into all the details right now. So my example that I made working was writing a comment. So for example, you could write a comment a bit like GitHub Copilot. And you can say, write a code snippet that does X, and it will, under the comment, it will generate the code.
Yeah, this is amazing.
But I think also related to this, if I implement AI, it's going to be really helpful for beginners to explain code.
Right.
So for example, if you copy, as you said, a code snippet from Stack Overflow, you paste it, and maybe you need to make a small change or something, and you're not sure how it works and how it does it, you can explain that bit of code, and it will say what happens on every line in plain words. So it makes it easier to customize it.
Yeah, really, really interesting. We got into a chat yesterday about AI, because I think AI, it's fair to say, it's scary on the one hand, and on the other hand, it's brilliant. There are things about AI which concern me, and equally there are things about AI which I'm incredibly impressed by. And this side of things just fascinates me. Just the idea that there'll be a model to help people write what is really difficult for some people to get their head around. Writing PHP can be tricky if you're at the beginning. Learning is a big cliff face. You've got to really climb a long way up before you start to be effective. And so anything like this, which can help people along that journey and just give them insights into where things have gone wrong or where they could have improved things, is just fascinating.
But this will not only be for PHP. For example, I tried it with generating CSS, telling it stuff like generate the CSS for a button that's red and has a white border, and it does that well. Also, a nice use case is, for example, you have a snippet written in jQuery. It's able to, for example, convert jQuery to vanilla JS. If you want to teach jQuery. But yeah, I haven't tried it on extremely large pieces of code, but for simple examples, it worked really well.
It's absolutely fascinating. The other piece about the plugin, which I really want to highlight, is the library of snippets which already exists. Because again, if you download WP Codebox and you install it, you've got access to what is, I imagine, a growing library of, and again, I'm going to assume verified snippets that have been checked by somebody to make sure that they do what they say they do. But the point is, inside of WP Codebox, along for the ride comes a bunch of snippets which you didn't create for typical things. And just talk us through that. Where are you going with that? How much have you got? Have you got like a contributor team that are helping you build that over time?
Yeah, actually, I have an UI for that, but that's not yet made public. And I want to implement a submission system and a rating system for the snippets on the repository so we can increase the quantity and the quality of those snippets. So I don't know, maybe in the future we'll have something like tested by WP Codebox for snippets that we personally tested ourselves, or and for the others we'll have a rating system that if a snippet does something bad, it was user submitted, you can downvote it or report it or something like that.
Yeah, and again, it's organized into folders, for want of a better word.
Yeah,
so different types of snippets for different types of scenarios. And again, I can just see this being a useful place. I mean, obviously you can go to Google to find the snippet on Stack Overflow, but it feels like if you've got this repository built in, that seems like a decent first place to go and start for typical things.
Yes, that's the idea.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, let's hope that grows over time. And towards the end of the podcast, I always ask people, where can you be contacted? So scan forward to the end if you want to find out what Ovi's details are and maybe get involved in that project. There's also something which I found quite intriguing, which was your live CSS updating. I know it's a little thing, it's a simple thing, but it's really, really helpful to be able to see what's happening as it happens. Tell us about that and just what does it bring to the table?
So that allows you to write CSS and see the changes on the site in real time without the page refreshing. So for example, if you're working on a page, you can have WP Codebox open, have a CSS snippet, turn on auto reload, and as you write CSS, your page will update with the changes. A nice use case for this that came from the users, I didn't even think about it, is that it actually works in page builders. So for example, if you have, I don't know, Oxygen open, or even in Gutenberg, you can write CSS and see your elements updating inside the builder.
Oh, so inside the UI of Oxygen or Beaver Build. Oh, that is interesting.
This is a use case I haven't even thought about, but a few users tried it, and yeah.
Because it's a bit of a, on the face of it, it seems like, well, that's a curious feature. But the amount of time that you'll save clicking save, waiting for things to publish and go live, and then go and check it in a different tab and so on. This is all happening in basically the same interface at the same time. And if memory serves, when I was playing it the other day, you've built in an inspector tool as well, haven't you, into the...
Yeah, and just to the last point, you can also use SCSS. That's not available in all builders or customizers. So
yes,
this also works for SCSS.
Yeah. Just a lovely little feature which enables you to just save basically a boatload of time. Imagine how many seconds you're wasting, and it all adds up over the week. And lovely feature.
And the preview, you were mentioning the preview and the DOM inspector. You also can open a mini web browser inside the WP Codebox, and when you're working on CSS or SCSS, have a mini browser on the right to have the page open, and there is a DOM inspector with which you can select elements, and it will autocomplete their selectors in the CSS on the left.
Yes, I think that's what I was alluding to. That's the bit that I accidentally sort of stumbled upon last night and thought, oh, that's curious. I must mention that. People who are listening to this podcast, typically they're building websites for either themselves or other people. I think mostly it's people building websites for other people. And so they're probably going to want to know, okay, this is great, but can I use this? Can I put this on a client website? Is there some sort of permission system so that, I don't know, certain clients have got access to different snippets, or I can lock them out, and so on and so forth? So give us a bit of an insight into how you're handling people using this on client websites?
Yeah, this was a feature that wasn't available when I first launched WPCodeBox a year and something ago, but it was very requested, exactly this use case. So I built the API key manager because WPCodeBox uses an API key to communicate with the cloud. And right now you can create multiple API keys for your customers. So for example, when you install WPCodeBox on a client site, you can create an API key, give it a name, a description, client A's API key, and from there you can set the permissions for that API key. So you can set it to full permissions that will allow the client to upload code snippets to the cloud, download, modify them. You can set it to read only, so that client site will only be available to download snippets, or you can disable the API key at any time, and that will completely hide the cloud from that site. This is not yet available on a snippet or folder level. It's just for the whole cloud.
Oh, okay, because that was going to be my following question. Yeah. So I was wondering if it would be possible for client A to only be able to see client A's snippets, which might be a folder that I've set up inside of WPCodeBox, but client B over here has got a totally different set. Is it as granular as that, or have I misunderstood?
Yeah, no. You can allow them access to the cloud, or allow them read-only access to the cloud, or none at all.
Okay.
But I do plan to add more granular access at some point.
Well, speaking of planning, let's go into the road map, because there's a couple of things which I think are really extremely cool. We'll leave the what I think is the most exciting one till the end. But first couple of things that you've mentioned that are on the roadmap on the website are, you've got a Chrome extension and you've got a cron service. Just run us through why would we want a Chrome extension? What possible need have we got for that?
My first vision for the Chrome extension was to be able to go, for example, to Stack Overflow, see a nice snippet, and be able to right click on it and click Save to my cloud snippets. So to grow your library. But after user feedback and talking to users, I'm rethinking that I might make the whole WPCodeBox UI a Chrome extension at some point.
Ooh, interesting. Yeah. Okay, that's got me thinking. Okay, and the cron service, what are you planning to do with that?
I was thinking to create a service that will allow you to set some snippets to run at certain times. So for example, I don't know, run every day at 12, and then an external service will ping a secret URL on your site and will execute that snippet.
Oh, got it. I see. Oh, that's fascinating. Yeah.
Relating to this, what I'm planning to do sooner is to allow snippet. Right now you can manually run snippets. So for example, if you want to run a snippet in the context of WordPress, but not every time the page loads, you have a run button at the top if you set the snippet to run manually, and you can run it anytime. But again, based on user feedback, I think I will add the ability to run snippets using a secret URL with a secret token and key in it. And that will allow for easier integration with stuff like Zapier and external services like that.
Got it. Okay,
so for example, run this snippet when, I don't know, something happens.
Wow, the world really opens up as soon as you throw Zapier into the mix. It's just like, okay,
yes.
more or less any condition on the website, on the internet could be used to make. Okay. I'll park that one for a moment and mull that when we finish recording. But the one that's got me excited, the one that I think is the most interesting, is hopefully coming soon at some point, is the ability to take all of the snippets, take all of the bits and pieces that you've created, and create a custom plugin. Now, on the face of it, I guess some people are going to say, well, why would I want to do that if I've got the WPCodeBox plugin and I've installed it and everything's working? Why is this needed and so cool?
This brings some advantages. It will say my plan is to save all the snippets inside the separate functionality plugin as plain PHP files. So this will include conditions, error checking, stuff like that. So for example, when you're done with the site, you can disable or remove WPCodeBox and keep all the functionality. But yeah, it will add some performance improvements too, and it will open up some interesting things we can do with snippets, like for example override WooCommerce templates. That's not possible right now.
Yeah, yeah. So the piece there that I think is very cool, firstly, is the obvious performance improvement if you're only loading the bits and pieces that you need. But also, I guess it goes back to the conversation we were having a minute ago about client websites. If you just export to the plugin the bits and pieces that this particular website needs, then the client need never sort of see WPCodeBox. It's just an additional plugin which is designed for your particular website to achieve certain functionality, and there it is. And you can build it all with all the nice tools that you've put into WPCodeBox and just export it, and it's just there for you and your website. It's nice.
Exactly. And this could tie in with the Chrome extension. So for example, when you as the developer visit that site, you might still be able to access WP Codebox if you have it in your Chrome browser.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's in the future.
Yeah. Okay, so we got to come to it. It's always talked about on podcast episodes. We usually leave it till the end. At the moment, caveat emptor, everybody. I don't know what Ovi's going to do with pricing, but we're in July 2022, and this episode might take several weeks to come out. So the pricing may be different. But at the moment, you've got a lifetime deal on. I'm always interested as to why people choose this model, because on the one hand, we've got developers who never touch lifetime. They just want, the stability of recurring revenue and an annual price and so on. Is this a price that you intend to keep going, or is this some sort of introductory price because the plugin, I don't know, it hasn't got years and years and years under its belt? What are you thinking around pricing?
Yeah, I'm not an expert marketer, but I plan to switch to a subscription model at some point. But yeah, until now, having a lifetime offer proved to be the right decision, because I've got so much feedback from the lifetime deal groups. I've made so many friends, and yeah, up until now, it's been a great decision. Going forward, I probably switch to a subscription model at some point.
Okay, well, if you are listening to this and you're lucky, then you may still be able to go and grab the pricing. I won't mention what the exact numbers are. All I can say is it's not an expensive plugin. If you manage to get the lifetime deal, I think it's very, very competitively priced. You mentioned the community and so on, and the fact that you've had lots of feedback. I'm guessing that you're still in that phase of development where you want feedback. You want people to contribute thoughts and ideas and help you, because it does sound like you've done a lot based upon the feedback that you've had. Is that still the case? Are you very much looking for people to become involved with you and talk to you and communicate what they think is missing and what they think the plugin needs?
I mean, does that phase even end?
Yeah.
Maybe when that ends, the product is dead too. Of course, of course, because I don't build as many sites, for example, as my customers do, and I make assumptions based on my thinking, but that might not always be the case, the best one.
Yeah.
A lot of assumptions, for example, that I've made when I built WP Codebox that changed based on user feedback.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because you sort of get the feeling that some products, because of the fact that they've been around for such a long time, they've kind of coalesced into, well, what they are. This is now what they've become. And really, if you ask us to radically alter the feature set, it's very unlikely that we're going to do that. We might add a little thing here and a little thing there, but it does sound like you've added some fairly sizable changes, like the condition builder, for example, which really revolutionizes what you can do with it based upon user feedback. So I think that's more what I was meaning, that you're still open for really seismic suggestions.
Yeah, of course. If I get good suggestions, I get excited and I will, add them to the roadmap and take it from there.
That is really, really nice. Yeah, it's lovely to hear.
Because I'm not, as I said, I'm not a marketer, but I think I read The Lean Startup a few times. It's my favorite book about this. And I think user feedback is the greatest asset you can have.
Yeah, that's nice to hear. It really is. I was about to say, it's a really fabulous product. I would strongly recommend that you go and check it out. WP Codebox is at WPCodeBox.com. No hyphens or anything like that. Just WPCodeBox.com. I'll put links into the show notes. Ovi, if people do wish to reach out to you just because they're curious or they've got suggestions or they've got questions, what's the very best one or two places that they can do that?
Well, they can check the WP Codebox site. We have a contact section there. I read all the emails. The roadmap is open, so everyone can submit ideas, feedback, anything they like. And we also have a Facebook group, WP Codebox Community. I post a lot there of updates and ask users about what they think about certain features. I show previews. And yeah, I think these are the ways.
Okay.
The best ways they can contact me.
Well, I have honestly, I've got very, I'm pretty certain that this plugin is going to take off with quite a lot of our listeners. I certainly hope so. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you and an absolute pleasure playing with the tool over the last few days. Really appreciate you coming on the podcast today. Thanks, Ovi.
Yeah, Nathan, thank you so much for the invitation. It was awesome.
Okay, I hope that you enjoyed that. Very nice to chat with Ovi about his new plugin, WP Codebox. Hopefully you've got a sense of the power of what it can do, and really, your imagination is the limit here. It's like an open box, and you can fill it up with whatever you like, but with so many handy features like the cloud sync and the ability to use the library and the live loading of the CSS and various other things. I've started to make great use of this plugin, and I'm really, really bullish about it. I very much like it. Check out the show notes for links to get to WP Codebox and also to a David Wormsley video which will show you how the plugin works. The WP Builds podcast is brought to you today by GoDaddy Pro. GoDaddy Pro, the home of managed WordPress hosting that includes free domain, SSL, and 24/7 support. Bundle that with the Hub by GoDaddy Pro to unlock more free benefits to manage multiple sites in one place, invoice clients, and get 30% off new purchases. You can find out more by going to go.me/WP Builds. And we really do thank GoDaddy Pro for their ongoing support of the WP Builds podcast. Okay, as it was an interview this week, that means next week it will be a chat with David Wormsley, and I will be talking through our WordPress Business Bootcamp, wherever we've got up to by now. I hope that you'll join us for that. If not, perhaps we'll see you on Monday for the This Week in WordPress live show. We do that at 2 p.m. UK time over at wpbuilds.com/live. But as I say, we'll be back next Thursday. The only thing that remains for me to do is to fade in some cheesy music and say, stay safe. Bye-bye for now.